So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about an Omega level commander. And an Omega level commander is a commander that is incredibly powerful and a massive threat. And the Omega level commander that we're going to be talking about on this episode is Isshin to Heavens as 1. Isshin is a 3/4 human samurai that costs red, white, black. He has, if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability, if a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So while Isshin only has one sentence of text, that is all he needs to be an Omega level commander, because this is an incredibly powerful trigger. Because, I mean, in the past, we have seen other commanders that double up on certain triggers, like, Yarok doubles up on ETBs, Teysa doubles up on death triggers, and yeah, this is now an attack Harmonicon commander that counts every single attack, not just your own. So if you've got a permanent that can trigger off an opponent's attack, it's going to do so twice. But yeah, every single attack trigger that you can have, you are going to double up on, and believe me, there are some incredibly powerful attack triggers in this color combination, so things can get really out of hand really quickly. Especially since Isshin is quite the low to the ground commander, only costing 3 mana, so even if this commander is dealt with, you can easily get Isshin back out and pick up right where you left off and continue the beatdown, and my goodness, can you hit hard and hit fast with this deck. Now, although this is an Omega level commander, it does not come at an Omega level price for this deck tech, because every single card in the deck, including the commander, is less than $1, so it's a very budget friendly deck. And while going through the cards on this episode, I'm going to take you through different tactics that show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. On top of that, if you are interested in this deck, make sure you check out the link in the description below, and yeah, with all that said, let's jump into it. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble. I love saying that. By paying 2, we can tap to sacrifice to go get a basic land into play tapped. But of course, we also have some awesome mana rocks as well to help us out with Arcane Signet, which can tap for any of our colors, and Cold Steel Heart, which is finally budget friendly again. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped. We choose a color, and it can tap to add 1 mana of the chosen color. Moving on, some less flexible but still fantastic mana rocks are the diamonds, with Charcoal Diamond, Fire Diamond, and Marble Diamond each enter the battlefield tapped and tap for 1 of our 3 colors. Next up, of course, we're also going to be running our signets with Boros, Orzhov, and Rakdos. Each costs 2, and we can pay 1 into them to tap for their guild's colors. And then we're also going to be running one of the talismans, the only actually budget-friendly one in these colors, with Talisman of Hierarchy. It can tap for any color, so we can tap for either white or black, and it's going to deal 1 damage to us. But finally, we even have an attack trigger that can help us out when it comes to ramping with Aerial Surveyor. It's a 3/4 vehicle with flying that has crew 2, and when it attacks, if defending player controls more lands than you, search your library for a basic plains card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So yeah, if we are playing against a green player, and chances are pretty likely with that, they will most likely outramp us when it comes to lands, so yeah, we can just keep getting a lot of plains with this. Especially since our commander again doubles up this fantastic attack trigger. And of course, we are just getting started when it comes to attack triggers. Because we even have attack triggers that can help us out with card advantage, starting off with Audacious Thief, which has, when it attacks, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Now, in Commander, 1 life for 1 card is well worth it, and it's a deal I'll make any day of the week, and again, with our Commander, we're doing that twice. Next up, there's Tectonic Giant, which has, when it attacks or becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, choose 1. It deals 3 damage to each opponent, or exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose 1 of them. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. So this is either a good amount of temporary card advantage / selection, or a ton of damage to our opponent's faces. And then Mezia Mugger has Blitz for 2 in red, and when it attacks, we exile the top card of each player's library. We can play those cards this turn, and we may spend mana or mana of any color to cast those spells. So this can give us access to a ton of cards at once. Next up, we've got the Looter Scooter with Smuggler's Copter. It's a 3/3 vehicle with flying, and it has crew 1, and when it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So this is a great way to dig down and get some damage through. Speaking of which, we've got Elder Brain, a 6/6 with Menace that has, when it attacks a player, exile all cards from that player's hand, then draw that many cards. You may play lands and cast spells from among the exiled cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend manas or mana of any color to cast it. This is an incredibly brutal and fantastic effect for this deck, and again, remember that gets doubled. So that player's hand goes bye-bye, they get a new hand which also goes bye-bye, and we get access to all those cards. Now, as good as these cards are, there's still one in my opinion that stands well above the rest, and that is the Golden Pig of this deck, which is the #1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Atali Primal Storm. Atali is a 6/6 Elder Dinosaur that costs 4 red, and it has, whenever it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library, then you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana costs. Basically, attack, cast a ton of things off the top of libraries for free, and again, thanks to our commander, that is doubled. So at a base level, again, we usually would have access to 4 cards off the top of libraries, but again, thanks to this commander, we've got access to 8, and yeah, just one swing with this can turn the game completely into our favor and can really make things get out of control. The amount of value we can get from this one card in this deck is just unheard of, and it is most definitely worthy of the title of Golden Pig. But of course, outside of our attack triggers, we've got some more typical ways to draw cards as well in this deck with cards like Throw Possibility, Read the Bones, and Painful Truths. Throw Possibility is going to have us discard 1 to draw 2, Read the Bones has us scry 2, then draw 2 and lose 2 life, and Painful Truths is going to have us lose 3 and draw 3 as long as we use one of each of our colors to cast it. But now that we've talked about digging deeper into our deck, let's talk about how to really get the party started. So first up, let's talk about Triumphant Adventure, a 1/1 with Death Touch, and as long as it's our turn, it also has First Strike, so this is very hard to block, and whenever it attacks, we venture into the dungeon. Which obviously can provide a lot of different benefits depending on which dungeon we go through, but yeah, I mean, there are certain dungeons where you can make tokens, there are certain dungeons where you can draw cards, etc, etc, etc. And remember, we're going to be venturing twice as quickly through the dungeon thanks to our commander. But speaking of tokens, we can also make those with cards like Sky Knight Vanguard and Mardu Strike Leader. Sky Knight Vanguard has, when it attacks, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token that's tapped and attacking. And then when Mardu Strike Leader attacks, we're going to make a 2/1 Black Warrior creature token. But we can really fill the board up with something like Franco Tin String Kingpin, a 1/2 goblin that has, when it attacks, put a +1 counter on it, then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Franco's power. So in getting this trigger twice, with the first attack, it's going to be a 2/2, so we get 2 tokens, and then we get that trigger again, getting another counter on it, becoming a 3/4, getting 3 more tokens, so with just one attack, we are making 5 goblins, and of course, the more times we attack with this, the more ridiculous this gets. And actually, we'll talk about some ways here in a bit, but yeah, we've got plenty of other ways to pump our creatures' power even more. Regardless, we also have an enchantment that can help out all of our creatures when they attack with Mardu Ascendancy. It says, whenever a non-token creature you control attacks, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. And again, remember that's going to be 2 goblins, not just 1, for every single one of our non-token creatures attacking, thanks to our commander. And if we're really desperate, we can sacrifice this to give our creatures +0/+3 to protect them in combat. Next up, though, we can also bring some creatures over to our cause with a card like Rakshasa Debaser. It's a 6/6 that has, when it attacks, put target creature card from the defending player's graveyard on the battlefield under your control. And we can encore it out for 6 black to do this 3 times, well, assuming we've got 3 opponents. And then, of course, we're going to be running Sun Titan, which has, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card's mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So yeah, this can provide us an absurd amount of value throughout the game with that doubled attack trigger. Next up, though, also at 6 mana, we've got Gleam of Battle. It says, whenever a creature you control attacks, put a +1 counter on it. This can make things get out of hand very quickly. Again, every single one of our creatures are going to become massive in absolutely no time. Essentially, again, whenever they attack, they get 2 counters thanks to our commander. But of course, we also have other ways to pump our team with cards like Signal Pest, Hero of Oxid Ridge, and Adriana, Captain of the Guard. Signal Pest is a 0/1, but it's got Battle Cry. Whenever it attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and it can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. Next up, another Battlecry creature is Hero of Oxid Ridge. It's got haste, and it says, whenever it attacks, creatures with power 1 or less can't block this turn. So this not only can pump our team, but it can also make it so that tiny creatures can't block us. And then Adriana Captain the Guard has melee, which means when this creature attacks, it gets +1 until end of turn for each opponent you attack with a creature this combat, and on top of that, other creatures you control have melee. So by attacking all of our opponents with our creatures and doubling that, yeah, that is an absurd amount of damage. Speaking of which, we can really have things get out of hand with a card like Resurgence, which says, creatures you control gain first strike and vigilance until end of turn. After this main phase, additional combat phase, followed by additional main phase. By getting an extra combat, we can get even more value out of our commander. Moving on though, let's talk about some various ways to protect our team, starting off with a card like Hammers of Moradin. It's a 3/3 with Mirrodin, so when it attacks for each opponent other than the defending player, we get a token that's a copy of this creature that's attacking that player planeswalker they control. And again, our commander is going to double this up as well. Regardless, when this creature attacks, which also gets doubled up, for each opponent we tap up to one target creature that player controls. So we hit even harder with this, and we get to tap down 2 creatures for every single opponent to help our creatures get through. Next up, Ankle Shanker does have an attack trigger, but doubling it up doesn't really matter, but that's okay because it's an incredible one. It's a 2/2 with haste, and when it attacks, creatures you control gain first strike and death touch until end of turn. This combination of keywords essentially makes it so our creatures are impossible to block effectively. And yeah, it's very hard to take out those creatures in combat because we can just assign 1 point of damage with that first strike damage and that death touch to take out each of those creatures before they even hit ours. And then of course a card like Swift Boots can help us out in various ways. In this deck, it's going to give Equip Creature Hexproof and Haste. First off, this is just a great way to protect our commander, giving it Hexproof, and yeah, also that Haste can be a great way to get an attack trigger right away from a creature. I mean, just picture Atali coming down and, equipping these boots to it. Good luck, opponents. Moving on though, we can also protect our entire team by making them indestructible with cards like Boros Charm, Unbreakable Formation, and your temple is under attack. For just 2 mana, Boros Charm can either deal 4 damage to target player or planeswalker, make our permanents indestructible until end of turn, or give target creature double strike until end of turn. And then Unbreakable Formation is going to give creatures we control indestructible until end of turn. If we cast it during our main phase as well, we get a counter on each of our creatures and they gain vigilance until end of turn. Next up, your temple is under attack gives us an option. We can choose one, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn, or you and target opponent each draw 2 cards. Moving on though, we can also protect ourselves in a way with a card like Wingmate Rock. It's a 3/4 flyer with raid, so if we attack with a creature this turn, we get another 3/4 flyer. On top of that, whenever it attacks, we gain 1 life for each attacking creature, and again, our commander doubles that, so that's 2 life for every single one of our attackers, and that can be an absurd amount of life. So yeah, padding our life total is definitely a great way to protect us, especially if we keep swinging out. And of course, we can gain even more life, and also take our opponents down quite a bit with a card like Campaign of Vengeance. It says whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So that's going to be 2 life lost and 2 life gained for every single one of our creatures attacking. And speaking of dishing out the pain, we've got Hellrider as well, which has whenever a creature we control attacks, Hellrider deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. And again, instead of it just being a little, 1 damage ping, it's basically going to be a shock, 2 damage per creature. So our opponents aren't going to last very long once we get things like these going. And while we get a ton of benefits for swinging with our creatures, well, on the other hand, our opponents are going to have a really hard time swinging at us when we've got cards out like Righteous Cause, Revenge of Ravens, and Blood Reckoning. Righteous Cause says whenever a creature attacks you, gain 1 life. So no matter who is attacking who, it does not matter. If we're attacking someone else, or they're attacking us, or they're attacking each other, we are gaining 2 life for every single creature that is attacking, which can put our life total to an absolutely absurd amount that can make us really hard to take out. Speaking of which, there's Revenge of Ravens, which says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So if a player decides to swing at us, well, they're going to be punished a ton for doing so, and we gain a lot of life to make up for whatever damage they're going to be dealing. And then Blood Reckoning is still a great deterrent, although it is slightly worse than Revenge of Ravens. It's basically the exact same thing, but without that life gain. Still a fantastic way to drain our opponents if they have the audacity to swing at us. And moving on, if they do swing at us, we also can make a ton of clues with Search the Premises, which says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, investigate. So for every single creature that attacks us, we get 2 clues, and that's a lot of potential card advantage when we need them. Speaking of card advantage, there's Emberwild Captain, which has when it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. And whenever an opponent attacks us while we're the Monarch, Emberwhelmed Captain's going to deal damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand, which again is going to be doubled. So if someone's got a full grip, that's going to be 14 damage for just swinging at us. But things can get even more absurd thanks to Kazul Tyrant of the Cliffs. It says whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if you're the defending player, create a 3/3 red ogre creature token unless that creature's controller pays 3. 3 is an absurd amount to pay, and 6 is just unheard of because, again, this is going to double. So essentially, if a player does decide to attack us, we're probably going to be making 2 3/3s for free. Yeah, this can make it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for our opponents to ever attack us. But we, of course, can make it easier for us to attack our opponents with cards like Goro Goro, Brave the Sands, and Duelist Heritage. Goro Goro has pay a red, creature you control gain haste until end of turn. So for just 1 mana, we can swing away with our creatures, and yeah, that can provide us a lot of value throughout the game. Next up, Brave the Sands says creatures you control have vigilance, and each creature you control can block initial creature each combat. Giving our creatures vigilance allows us to be really aggressive and swing out while still keeping our creatures back to block, and our creatures are even more effective at blocking with this in play. And then Duelist Heritage is another fantastic enchantment in this deck. It says whenever one or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. So of course we can benefit our creatures with double strike, and actually if opponents are attacking each other, we can make some deals as well. But another fantastic keyword to add into the mix is of course Myriad. Well, okay, haste and Myriad. Regardless, Duke Older Raven Guard has at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and Myriad until end of turn. And again, Myriad essentially means that when that creature attacks, we get a token copy attacking the other players that creature is not attacking. So whatever our biggest creature is, yeah, we can send that at each opponent. And of course, if we have, something like Sun Titan that has a great ETB, let's get that twice again. But now let's move on and talk about some other ways to throw wrenches into our opponent's plans with cards like Vengeful Ancestor and Inferno Titan. Vengeful Ancestor has, when it enters the battlefield or attacks goad target creature, whenever a goaded creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to its controller. This can dish out an absurd amount of damage throughout the game and can get creatures out of our way and also, into the way of opponents by forcing those creatures to swing at other players and dish out damage and allow us to swing through. But speaking of dishing out damage though, there's Inferno Titan, which has, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. So again, on attack that's going to be 6 damage in total thanks to that doubling with our commander that we can spread out however we would like. And speaking of taking things out, we also have some lovely Eldrazi that can help us out with that with cards like Bane of Balaged, Ulamog's Crusher, and Artisan of Kozilek. Bane of Balaged has, when it attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents they control, and 2 is already a lot, but 4 is ridiculous. So of course, Ulamog's Crusher also has Annihilator 2, which means that whenever it attacks, defending player sacrifices 2 permanents, and again, that's doubled to 4. Which of course, Artisan of Kozilek also has Annihilator 2, and on top of that, whenever we cast a spell, we can return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. Regardless of which of these is attacking, it's going to be incredibly bad news for the player that they are attacking, and they are going to get decimated incredibly quickly. But of course, we also have some standard removal spells as well to help us out with cards like Despark, Chaos Warp, and Oblation. Despark's going to exile target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. Chaos Warp's going to shuffle a permanent into its owner's library, and then that player shuffles their library and reveals the top if it's a permanent card that goes onto the battlefield. And then Oblation's going to make the owner of target non-land permanent shuffle into the library and then draw 2 cards. Moving on, we're also going to be running Crush Contraband, Cleansing Nova, and Austere Command. Crush Contraband says choose 1 or both exile target artifact or exile target enchantment. Cleansing Nova says choose 1 to destroy all creatures or destroy all artifacts and enchantments. And Austere Command is even more flexible, choose 2. Destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 4 or greater. So yeah, depending on whatever situation that we're in, this can really help us out. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's move on to the lands. First up, we've got Command Tower, which can tap for any of our colors, Exotic Orchard, which you usually can, and Path of Ancestry, which can tap for any of our colors, but it does enter the battlefield tapped. But when we do cast, our commander or another creature that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. Moving on, we've got Nomad Outpost, which enters the battlefield tapped and can tap for any of our colors, Ash Barrens, which we can basic land cycle away for any of our basics, and Rogue's Passage, which can make target creature unblockable this turn. Next up, we've got Evolving Wilds and Terraforming Expanse, both of which we can tap and sacrifice to get a basic land to play tapped, and Mirror Landscape, which enters battlefield tapped, taps for a color, so we can pay 2 to tap and sacrifice it to get 2 basics that share your land type into play tapped. Moving on, we've got Cabaret Courtyard, Maestro's Theater, Obscura Storefront, and Riveteer's Overlook. Every single one of them is going to enter the battlefield and be sacrificed immediately, and when we do, we search our library for 1 of 2 of our basics, and we gain 1 life. And the lands come into play tapped. Probably should have mentioned that, but still, these cards are fantastic. Moving on, we've got 6 lands that essentially do the exact same thing, but with different colors. But yeah, let's just use Cliffgate as an example. It enters battlefield tapped. When it enters battlefield, uses a color other than red, and it can tap for red or 1 mana of the chosen color. So essentially, at the end of the day, these lands can tap for 2 of our colors and can vary depending on what we need. And of course, finally, we're going to be rounding out our deck with basic lands with mountains, plains, and swamps. But now that we've talked about every single card in this deck, including the lands, let's talk about the price. Like I mentioned before at the beginning of this episode, every single card in this deck, including the commander, is less than $1, so it's got an estimated cost of just $33.10. And actually, that estimated cost does include basic lands at 10 cents a piece, so if you already have those basics, there's some extra savings there. And speaking of potential savings, you might be able to save even more by buying this deck on TCG Player and utilizing heavily played and damaged cards, which of course need a home too. Though, do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.